Well, the city police force may have found their man, why the current nominee for police commissioner could be a good fit for Baltimore. Hello everyone, I'm Jason Newton. Welcome to 11 TV Hill. It has been a whirlwind of a search, but now a new name has emerged to be the next leader of the Baltimore City Police Department. Baltimore City Mayor Catherine Pugh named this man, outgoing New Orleans Police Superintendent Michael Harrison, as her new pick for Baltimore Police Commissioner. Now, Harrison joined the New Orleans Police Department in 1991, where he quickly rose through the ranks there. In 2014, he was appointed superintendent of that department and then reinstated in 2018. Right after graduating high school in 1987, Harrison joined the Louisiana Air National Guard and served for 8 years there. Now, during his time in New Orleans, Harrison has dealt with issues that also plague our community. Like Baltimore City, New Orleans has one of the highest homicide rates in the country. But under his leadership, the Big Easy started seeing some improvements. In 2018, New Orleans had 145 homicides. That's the lowest homicide rate in that city in 47 years. Now, Harrison's pick comes after Mayor Pugh's initial choice, Fort Worth Chief Joel Fitzgerald, bowed out. Fitzgerald said that he withdrew his name to focus on his son, who recently had a medical emergency and needed to have brain surgery. At the time of his selection, he really was under heavy scrutiny, which led us to Harrison. Our lead investigative reporter, Jay Miller, looked into his time at the New Orleans Police Department and what he brings to the table here in Charm City.
A lot of people we know saw what happened, heard what happened, and we need more than anything for people to come forward.
That was New Orleans Police Superintendent Michael Harrison in July, pleading for the public's help to solve the shooting of 10 people in New Orleans. Harrison has now been named by Mayor Catherine Pugh to do in Baltimore what he's done in New Orleans: reduce violent crime. 2018 homicides in New Orleans were the lowest in 47 years.
He is one of the top police chiefs in the nation.
Harrison has been in the New Orleans Police Department since 1991. He became superintendent in 2014. He has overseen the New Orleans Police Consent Decree, the result of decades of misconduct and corruption. Harrison was a favorite of Pugh's commissioner search panel, but not willing to go through the Baltimore process last year.
And some people were not willing to come into this process without complete confidence that their names would not be leaked out.
Pugh went on to choose Joel Fitzgerald, the chief in Fort Worth, Texas. When that nomination started to unravel last week, City Solicitor Andre Davis says Harrison changed his mind and agreed to take on the Baltimore job. He will participate in community meetings before his name is formally submitted to the City Council.
I think it's important that the community hears from the nominee what his intentions are, what his plan is, and engage with neighbors and community members throughout the city. That process will take place.
For 11 TV Hill, I'm Jane Miller.
All right, Jane, thanks. Harrison spoke with our sister station in New Orleans, WDSU, and had a message for both his hometown as well as Baltimore City.
I'm humbled, I'm proud, I'm humbled, I am grateful, number one, to God, grateful to the citizens of New Orleans who've been great for me and have stood by me, stood by my family, and stood by this department, and were patient with us while we transformed this department. It's had its ups and downs, it had its bumps in the roads, but the citizens of New Orleans were very patient, and what I would say to them is thank you. Well, my message is, number one, I want to hear from the citizens. I want to hear from the police officers in the Baltimore Police Department. I want to hear what their concerns are, I want to hear what their needs are, and I want to go, the mayor and I, and go advocate to make sure we get them all the resources the officers need to be successful, and then work on building bridges and building inroads, building relationships that were never built, improving good ones and repairing the bad ones, doing all of that, hitting the ground on the very first day. The message to the criminals: if crime is the life you choose, then prison will be the price you pay.
Now, again, our sister station in New Orleans did some groundwork for us. They've covered Harrison for the last 4+ years as superintendent, so we wanted to know more about how he was seen in their community and among their force. Travis Mackle joins us from outside New Orleans Police Headquarters, where the city is now in the middle of a search for their own top cop.
We're here at NOPD headquarters in New Orleans, Louisiana, where the search for a new police superintendent continues. The mayor told us she will pick that person solely on her own and not create a committee. Also, she will look from within. But let's talk about Michael Harrison, the man that will be the Baltimore Police Commissioner. A lot of people feel that Michael Harrison is really a cop's cop. Most people in the public really liked him. He's got a good personality. He's not abrasive. He's not a yeller and screamer. He's somebody that the community really identifies with. I'm sure you all in Baltimore have done deep dives into his background. Michael Harrison has been a cop for 28 years here with the NOPD, rising through the ranks, starting as a beat cop, then becoming a sergeant, a detective, and then a district commander before being named superintendent in 2014. That was really a surprise move when that happened. He was a district commander, but most people thought it's an interesting hire, but he's grown into the job. And one of the big things that he's had to tackle here on top of violent crime has been the federal consent decree. It's cost the city of New Orleans a lot of money, $55 million, but most people, including the federal monitors as well as elected leaders, feel that Michael Harrison has done a really good job at ushering in a lot of these Department of Justice guidelines that's made the NOPD better. The biggest ones deal with recruitment and retention. The goal here has been to hire a better person to become a good police officer. They feel that that will lead to a better workflow and lead to fewer problems on the back end when it comes to career police officers. Also, the consent decree here is focused on how police interact with the community. Here in New Orleans, all police officers under the consent decree have to wear body cameras. Michael Harrison has been big on officers turning on those cameras all the time, even when they're interacting with the public. Something else they've changed, how they investigate sex crimes and domestic issues. Here in New Orleans, under the consent decree, officers have to fill out basically a spreadsheet on every domestic call that they roll on. And really, like I said, the federal judge and the federal monitors, they think that Michael Harrison has done a really good job. A lot of political insiders feel that that's one of the real reasons the current mayor here in New Orleans, LaToya Cantrell, retained Michael Harrison last year when she took office, because he was appointed by a previous mayor named Mitch Landrieu. Now, as for reaction to Harrison leaving, a lot of people have been saddened and really upset by that because, like I said, he's a cop's cop. Most police officers liked him. Most pockets of the city, people in those communities liked him. So a lot of people were surprised that a lifelong New Orleanian is now heading to Baltimore. They're happy for him, but they're also interested to see where things stand in the future. But overall, most people like the job that Michael Harrison did. And here in New Orleans, we always gauge crime by the murder rate. It's the big ticket issue. Whether it's blind luck or good police work, Michael Harrison is the superintendent who led this city to its lowest murder rate in 47 years.
All right, Travis, thank you. Still ahead on 11 TV Hill, we get some Baltimore reaction to the nomination of Michael Harrison. That's still ahead. Stay with us. The Baltimore City Council is integral in deciding who will be the next Baltimore Police Commissioner. Joining us today, City Councilman Zeke Cohen. Thanks for coming by.
It's good to be here.
Good to see you. This has been one heck of a process getting to this point, but there seems like there's more promise now versus when we're working with Mr. Fitzgerald. Why is the feeling different now?
Yeah, I think that's right, but let's take a step back and just sort of think about where our city is. Baltimore is facing two unique crises. One is the crisis of violence, which we all know well. 309 homicides, that's 309 of our citizens that lost their lives last year. The other crisis, though, is a crisis of confidence. Citizens need to believe that the police department can keep them safe, that we can all function, that we can discernibly move the needle on creating a better, safer city. And so when we saw Dr. Fitzgerald come to town for only 2 days, refuse to do any real public engagement with community, refuse to release his background information, which is one of the things that we asked for. We said, you've got to engage in all 9 police districts, get to know our citizens, get to know your officers, and we want to see your full background check, because we just had a police commissioner literally get arrested for failure to pay his taxes.
Sure.
And so this is a moment where you've got to be transparent. He unfortunately was not willing to do that. We heard it loud and clear at the City Council Executive Appointments hearing, where community came out and said, we do not trust this process and we do not trust this nominee. And so he withdrew his nomination and Mayor Pugh nominated Mr. Harrison. Now, I think it is very important that the council continues to assert itself as a check on the executive branch, that we continue to scrutinize and ask tough questions. At the same time, I will say that we've been very encouraged so far that Mr. Harrison has been much more forthcoming. He led with wanting to do a listening tour. He wants to get to know our city. He has been open to sharing all the background information we need. And so just from my perspective, representing an incredibly diverse, wonderful district, I am encouraged by what I've seen so far.
But still no rubber stamp. I mean, we'll see this thing through, huh?
No, this is a council that has shown it's willing to stand up. That we hear the voices of community members loud and clear who are saying we need to be in this conversation as well. It's not about city government, it's about Baltimore. And what is this moment for Baltimore? This is a city that continues to struggle with violence, struggles with the opioid crisis, continues to have a hard time with our school system, and yet every day I see an enormous amount of hope. I was in a meeting last night, public safety task force that we run in my district, and we had over 30 community members from all over, all races and backgrounds come together to say we want to be part of this process. We want to be what moves Baltimore forward.
A little under a minute right now, but just tell me, what do you want to hear from Mr. Harrison? He walks in to make you walk out of that meeting and say, we got it. That's the
Absolutely.
guy.
So I need to see a public servant. I need to see someone that understands the complexity of Baltimore, that is willing to listen and engage, that has a clear, focused strategy on reducing violence within our communities, that has a plan, that is willing to engage all parts of Baltimore, because we know this is an incredibly diverse city with all different communities, but essentially someone who wants to come in here, hit the ground running, build respect from his officers, implement the consent decree faithfully, and stay focused on reducing violence. I also want to see him be willing to partner with other organizations. We know that the police alone cannot solve all of our problems, so he needs to be open to working with public health professionals on the opioid crisis, our business community, our communities that have not been listened to and are the most impacted by violence. They need to be a part of what moves this city forward.
All right, plenty more to talk about. Stick around because we're going to continue this discussion of police commissioner. We'll bring in some community members to discuss this new selection and just what they think about the search. That's still ahead. Welcome back. We continue now with our discussion about Baltimore's police commissioner nominee, Michael Harrison. Councilman Zeke Cohen back with us again. Also joining us, Ms. Monique Washington. She's the president of the Edmondson Village Community Association. Also Josh Harris, a political analyst. Also the vice president of the NAACP chapter here in Baltimore City. Thanks for coming by, everybody. I think what impressed a lot of people, and we spoke about this earlier, is that Mr. Harrison said that he wants to get on the ground running with citizens. How far can that take him, just saying those few words off the bat? I want to talk to the people first. Does that mean something to you?
It means a lot to us. I did research once they announced that they was going to bring him in to Baltimore, and he's been in the field for years. He shows stability. He's been in narcotics. He's been in the gangs and the issues we're having here. And first, he needs to really realize that he needs to gain our trust back. That's the very first thing that needs to be done. We want, at the end of the day, we want to feel safe. We don't want to be hostages in our homes. We don't want to feel terrorized. And the police department needs to bring back that feeling again for people to trust them to do what we need to do as citizens of Baltimore and taxpayers and voters.
Talk about cultivating that trust. How do you get to that point with someone brand new and someone from the outside?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's the biggest component here is that transparency. And we're dealing with the situation where Baltimore City government as well as the police department, there's a lack of trust there, right? This is a city where after we had the Judicial Department come in here and put us under consent decree. We had a gun trace task force incident, then we also had Detective Sean Suter, and so we really are looking for transparency and process. And so looking at Mr. Harrison's background, it looks like he has the ability to do it. He's dealt with a consent decree before. He has the experience to do it. New Orleans is a much more similar city to Baltimore than Fort Worth was. But again, here, this is about the transparency and how the process takes place. And I think that's the biggest component that people are going to be looking for, to say that we want to know what's happening. It's kind of like being in a relationship. You may be late to dinner, but if you don't say I'm going to be late to dinner, you're in big trouble.
Oh, you're in real big trouble.
So you got to communicate, and you got to be really transparent about what's happening. And I think that's what people are looking for. And so far, it's looking like he's taken the steps to do that, and possibly because he's dealt with the consent decree and understand what it's like to have to be in a situation where you absolutely need to be transparent with what's happening.
We know what Baltimore's like. We know an outsider. We know when someone hasn't been to Mondawmin Mall or hasn't driven up to Towson yet. How difficult is it, one, for an outsider to do this job, but two, to create this trust? I mean, that's another layer for him to take care of, yeah?
Yeah, and you're dealing with a department that has very deep challenges. Everything that the Department of Justice report found, everything that I knew from being a teacher in West Baltimore, that the relationship with community was fractured, if not completely broken. This is a department that needs deep structural reform, because like Ms. Washington said, folks need to feel safe. They need to feel safe walking their neighborhood. They need to feel safe when they come forward to police. We need to rebuild that sense of community between our officers and those that they serve. And that means you got to be out of the car. You got to be in the neighborhood. You got to get to know the Joshuas, the Ms. Washingtons. You got to know us as people, not just as folks that you're driving by and you may see something. We need to see a much deeper level of engagement, because while we have some brilliant and brave officers serving our department, structurally, we know it's not working.
I heard you did your homework on them. You did some research. What do you take back to the Community Association? How are you informing them, and what do they make of this so far?
Well, we have meetings. We just created a Southwest Community Development Corporation for our area, which is going to bring a lot of funds into our area. We have the Facebook page and we have the Nextdoor page. I post everything that I get to them, so that I want our community to be informed. The comments that I get back is amazing, because a lot of people are scared, and I try to tell them there are ways that you can report crime and nobody even know you've done it. So we need, for one, the mayor to. I'm happy that she picked him, but in my opinion, he should have been the first nominee. I mean, all his qualifications are perfect. Bring him here, step back a little bit, and let him do what he needs to do with his police department. And I think within a few months, maybe a year, we should see some kind of improvements.
Yeah, I think that it's important too, aside from, we know that crime is a major issue, but this commissioner, whoever comes in and is confirmed, they're going to have to deal with 3 issues. One is going to be actually the internal workings of the police department and managing that, navigating it, and getting the rank and file to actually respect them and follow their lead. That's a whole nother, especially being an outsider, it's going to be difficult to build those relationships. 2, they're going to have to deal with the transparency in relationships in the community. But then 3, we also realize that there's also contention between the FOP and Baltimore City. And so this person can't get too close to the community, and they can't get too close to the FOP. And so they have to toe a delicate line of how they play the role here, so that the FOP doesn't target them, and so that the community doesn't disrespect them, and that we build that relationship with them. So it's going to be very difficult to navigate. And so I'm interested in seeing how he deals with this interview process and going through navigating those 3 challenges, particularly here in Baltimore City.
What's the priority? What do we need? There's so many things that, like you said, that need to be fixed. But for a new person coming in, what's job one? What do we have to hit first?
Yeah, I would say, look, this is about who we are as Baltimoreans. This is a unique moment for our city where we are truly trying to redefine ourselves. We know that we've suffered from deindustrialization, the opioid crisis, segregation. We have every challenge known to women and man, and yet we have this beautiful city with incredible people who are fighting every single day to make it better. And so just like he needs to come in here and do what he needs to do, we need to do what we need to do, which is hold him and his department accountable, which is to be partners in the work of public safety, which is to offer alternatives when it comes to how do we get folks who are substance user addicted to opioids? How do we get them treatment and out of this vicious cycle of dependency? Making sure people have access to jobs and education. This is not just about the police department. This is about Baltimore and where our city needs to be in this unique moment of challenge and opportunity.
What is the ideal relationship that needs to, what would that relationship look like under a new commissioner between the community and police right now? Got about a minute left.
It's hard to say, Jason. I mean, right now I have an excellent relationship with our major in Southwest, but for some strange reason, you know, I can get a relationship with him today, and tomorrow I call, it's a new major.
New person.
And that's another issue. If you find someone that can combat the problems in a certain area, leave them for a minute, because now we got to rebuild another relationship. You know, files may have been lost, and it creates a problem. So I need to be able to, for my community, because a lot of them are scared, I tell them, come to me. I have no problem with it. And I can go and do what I need to do so that we can, at the end of the day, I don't want my homeowners leaving, because if the homeowners leave and somebody buys that house, here come the renters. Now we got more of a problem. I want my homeowners who care about the community to feel safe and know that they can have a relationship with somebody so that we can combat what's going on in our area at the moment.
And I think that consistency is extremely important. As someone who's played sports, a coach can't come in and rebuild a team in 1 year, 2 years, or even 3 years. It takes time. And so not just on the commander and major level, but with this chief top cop, like, it's extremely important to give him an opportunity to rebuild the structure of the police department, to be transparent, accountable, and responsible for what's happening here in Baltimore.
Well, listen, I want to thank all three of you for coming by. Huge topic. We'll talk about it for weeks to come. We'll see how this all turns out.
Thank you for
Good to see
having
all
us.
three of you.
Thank you.
Stay with us. Be right back. And that's all for this edition of 11 TV Hill. Thank you for joining us. And while Mr. Harrison has been nominated, this process is far from being over. So we'll continue to follow the story here on TV 11 News. We'll see you next time.